following video is an example of how we can set up territories. What I'm going to target is set up territories using Salesforce, geopointe maps for Salesforce, and Enerlead for Salesforce, the data, the oil and gas regulated data. What we're looking at is the interface for geopointe, and what I'm going to focus on is compressor stations, specifically large ones, and I want to put those into some sales territories, making sure that we're out doing site visits to these compressor stations on a regular basis, or gas plants, anything that potentially is manned in a large facility. And over here on my sidebar, some of the information that I have, what I'm able to do is look at some data. The first set of data I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at a database that Environment Canada manages, and that is facilities that have a carbon footprint. And what I'm asking for is I want all the facilities named that have plant or compression in it and have an output of 500 tons of carbon per day. So they've got some equipment that are submitting carbon on that side of it. So if I click on this, what it will do is it will go in and will query the entire map, and it will put that information down there for me. Once I have this on here, I start looking at some different information or some different tools that I have to allow me to organize the information. So again, I'm looking at trying to set up some territories for myself. So I might come in and put in a heat map and say, hey, let's take a look at these particular facilities and how they're broken out, and I can draw that out. I may want to go in and say who are the account names so I can become more familiar with those, and then I can come down and I can look at the different names and outputs of the different facilities. In this, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to come back to my main choice, and I'm going to look at our new facilities or amended facilities that are going through the regulatory process that contain the word compressor in there. So I'm looking for anything that has COMP in there, and I'll go ahead into the same section everywhere, and I'll click that. So we now have two sets of data. A lot of them are existing facilities. The other set of data are potential facilities that are either being built or potentially or have been built, and they're doing some additional work to it. Again, I'm going to use a very similar tool I'm going to use the same tool. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say on this particular map, let's go in and apply the heat map as well. And what I'd like to do with the heat map is now set up to myself and say, okay, now how would I break this out from a territory perspective? One advantage of the geopointe application is I can come in and I can build geofences. So I could say, hey, this looks like a pretty interesting sales territory that I might be able to assign a salesperson to go in and take a look at it. Once I've built it, I can come in and I can go save as, and I can go ahead and build the sales territory. What I've done, just to expedite the demo a little bit, is I have gone in there, and in my personal shapes, I went in and I built some different compressor territories. So we're going to look at this compressor territory too. And so that was some area that I identified of interest. And then when I go ahead and I say, okay, well now let's go back to that, and instead of everywhere searching data, we want to go specifically to the shape, and we want to look at the Environment Canada data specifically to that. And I also want to look at the facility data specifically to that location. So, and then when we come in, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see this information a bit more clearly, and then start to do an analysis on it. So we're going to come in here, we're going to take a look at it. So there's the data. One of the things that I can do, just like we did in the first demo, is I can come in and I can say to what I've drawn on here, I could come in and I could say, okay, well, let's take a look at the facilities, and I want to put a heat map on this particular data. So when I start putting heat maps on here, I can now build secondary territories. I can look at roads, I can look at routes, those types of things to identify what areas might be of most interest to me. The other thing that we can do is we can come down here, we can take a look at which accounts are they that are in these particular areas. So we start to go through that process, account-based selling, which accounts are in this area and which are the ones that are most interest to us. Also, what we're looking for are probably the most prolific area ones. So I can look specifically at the records, and I can say, well, I only want to target large facilities. So here I see Beltrex, and in the category type description, I can see that they're doing 7,200 cubic feet of gas, almost 7,800 cubic feet of gas. So I'm going to click that particular one, and I'm just going to go down and I'm going to look at a few of these and say, hey, here's a compressor station. So let's just look for the really large ones. So here's a battery that has from Canadian Natural 600 cubic feet of gas, and then we'll just go down. We'll pick a few more here as examples. So that's page 1, and then I'm going to go over to page 2. Take a look at that information. Here's 450. We're going to put that in our category as well. And then here's a really large one, Pado, on that side of it. And maybe one more here. So that's a good example there. I can also come in and look at the Environment Canada facilities and say, yeah, I want to look at all of those ones because I know they're large on that side of it. So now I've built a map and said, okay, here are the areas that are the largest for me. And then when I zoom in and I look at this information, I can start to say, well, what is my best route if I want to go in? So now I only want to specifically target these very large ones and then add these other ones as a secondary target. And then I can come back to my tool and say, okay, this is a natural fit here, and I want to come in and I want to target all the larger ones in this particular area. So now I have sales territory 1 and then subcategory 2, and then do the same thing down here. Say, hey, this is the area that I want to look at. And now we've broken it down into much smaller market segments. And then I would come back, I'd save those, plop those maps, and then go back to my instance of Salesforce and say, hey, here's my target accounts that I'm looking for in this particular area. And do an analysis at what kind of contacts do I have with them, what kind of contacts do I have at the facility, how often do I go in and take a look at that. So this is an example of how we can use data. We can use Salesforce, the CRM application. We can use Enerlead information, and we can use mapping to quickly help us identify territories, set up our target market, and then assign ourselves plans to go out and target that particular market.